Hello, welcome to Lit with Lloyd. I am your host, Lloyd Russell. I want to give a shout out to KCAT for allowing me to do this and to have these great guests on. And today we have an author, Ellie Alexander, who has written a whole ton of books, which we will talk about, but also does a bunch of other stuff. So I think it's going to be pretty interesting. Welcome, Ellie.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's great to have you. My first question's a real easy one. How can you have written about 30 books and still be a speaker, a coach, and a blogger?
I know, right? I know. The reality is, as a writer, I'm just very disciplined. I started writing when my son was in kindergarten. And I had this finite amount of time. I would drop him off at 9 a.m. and I had to pick him up at 2 o'clock. So I think I've just trained myself. Like, my muscle memory is very solid for that particular window of time. So I write 2,000 words a day, every day of the week, sometime between 9 and 2. And then after 2, I'm toast.
Okay, so let's break this down just a little bit.
Yeah.
What kind of coaching do you do? Because that sounds like it's a pretty important part of what you do each day.
Yeah, that's kind of a newer evolution for me, because now I feel like I'm at the point in my career with over 30 published novels that I have something to potentially offer back. And even with that, I still am always like, do I know what I'm doing? But coaching is usually done online through Zoom sessions. And my students range at every stage of the writing process. So some I'm helping them develop ideas and create kind of a writing routine and rhythm. Sometimes we're working on plot and structure. And I try to limit how many coaching students I have, just because that kind of, intimate connection that you have when you're helping somebody develop a story takes a lot of time. So usually I only have a couple coaching clients a week. Okay.
And on your website, it says that you help authors find agents and publishers. What kind of connections do you have to be able to possibly get them published?
Well, publishing is its own beast, right? And so there's no guarantee. But when the pandemic hit, I had been talking for a while about potentially doing some sort of mystery writing class. And for the first time, I had enough time on my hands to be able to do that. So I put together a comprehensive mystery writing course that is all self-paced. So my students go through that phase, and then part of that course is all about the process of how you find an agent, an editor, a publishing contract. It's a lot of research and like hoops that you need to jump through, and it's its own process. And I think a lot of new writers make the mistake of, once they've finished a book, which is amazing and such a huge accomplishment, they just sort of send out a blanket query to every agent on the planet without doing kind of that fine tuning and research that you need to do to find someone who's a match for you.
And I guess there are really a lot of small independent publishers around the country. I know we have a bunch right here in the Bay Area. And I guess they're always looking for new authors.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the landscape of publishing is changing so much too. Even since I was first published 10 plus years ago, I can't believe how much it has shifted and changed. So I'm always trying to stay ahead of the curve in terms of what's happening. There are kind of a whole new round of publishers coming out who are really focused on digital space. So it's digital and audio rights first, and then print is kind of getting backed off. So it's fascinating.
That's great. All right. Well, something that I actually failed to do when we started was to acknowledge our live audience. So, audience, let's hear it from you, please.
Yay!
Okay, that's enough. We'll let you know when to speak up again. Okay, so let's go back to the beginning. So you actually started writing when you said your son was in kindergarten, and that's about 10 years ago?
Well, 10 years ago was when I had my first book published. I was writing long before that, yeah.
Okay. How did you get started writing?
I wrote my first mystery when I was in second grade, and I still have a copy that my mom saved.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, my penmanship was much better. There's not a lot of plot. It's a story about a haunted house where these two young girls' bikes break down and they go inside. It's kind of, it portends to me becoming a cozy mystery writer because there are like cobwebs that sweep over their face and creaky floors. But at the end of the day, they find bicycle repair kits in this spooky basement and ride off the next day happily ever after. So, yeah.
When did you graduate from second grade to adult writing?
Yeah. I minored in creative writing in college, and then I spent probably 10 or 15 years writing first drafts that would go nowhere. My first career was in speech therapy, actually, but I think that really helped my writing career because you have to pay really close attention, and I would take copious notes, and I still use that now in my writing. So I transitioned to writing in my early 30s.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how did you pick your particular genre?
Yeah, I grew up reading these kinds of mysteries. They're called cozies, meaning that there's not a lot of gratuitous violence. The murder takes place kind of off stage, so to speak, and the focus is really about kind of piecing together the clues, like a modern day Agatha Christie. And my mom and grandmother read these prolifically. So I remember I would go to the library on Friday and come home with a stack of mysteries and just devour them over the weekend.
Wow. So really that started in second grade where you were interested in mysteries.
Probably. I don't think I was reading, maybe Agatha or P.D. James then, but yeah.
That's fantastic. Okay, so you published your first book about 10 years ago. How did it get published and by whom?
Kensington Publishing was my first publisher. My very first series is set in Portland, and it features this young journalist who wants to be an investigative reporter but can't get a job because newspapers are dying, which is now very sadly true. And I think I was kind of in the right place at the right time because no one had done a concept like that. There hadn't been a lot of cozies set in Oregon. So I pitched it to a number of agents. I had 6 offers from agents right away.
Wow.
And then my agent went and sold it 2 weeks later in a 3-book deal, which is that's not usually the norm.
Correct.
It was definitely, and I don't necessarily even think it was that I feel proud of my writing, but I also think it was sometimes it's the right concept at the right time. Ironically, those books, they only went to 5 books, and some of my other series, I can't not talk with my hands. Some of my other series are much longer running now. So, yeah.
Wow. So you wrote all 5 books before you decided to go off into something else?
No, I had written 1 book because the way that you pitch these, they usually, publishing houses buy them in 3-book deals. And so I had written the first book, and I was so excited because I had a contract then for 2 more books that I had yet to write. I had concepts for them. When you're doing these pitches, you do a proposal that kind of maps out where the series would go. And my agent called and said, hey, Macmillan is interested in having someone write a series about a bake shop with a mother and daughter. And I feel like maybe you like to bake. He didn't know anything about, like my secret baking life. So he said, do you want to put something together? And of course, at the time I said sure, because I was naive and an idiot. And in 2 weeks, I came up with the Bake Shop series, went to Ashland, did all this research, wrote the first 3 chapters and a proposal, and Macmillan bought that 2 weeks later.
And how many books did they buy?
Well, they bought them in 3, but we just signed through book 21.
Wow. All with Macmillan?
All with Macmillan, yeah.
I mean, that's a big publisher.
I know.
You really did good.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes I have to pinch myself. Like, is this real? Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And is your how many Baker books have actually been published?
The 17th book comes out next month. So,
Okay.
you're always working ahead in publishing. Yeah.
How does it work when you write that many books in one series and for one publisher? How does it work in terms of sales? Do they build on each other? Does each book do a little bit better than the one before?
Right.
And what does Macmillan do to help you promote?
Ooh, good questions all around. I think, one of the gifts of a long-running series is that readers grow with you in theory. And so over the course of time, once readers are sort of hooked, they'll come back for each book, as long as I do my job right and I keep them fresh. And I think that's the challenge at this stage, when I'm looking at starting book 20 in a week or so. The characters have grown and evolved so much. So wanting to make sure that you're not boring new readers who are or you're not confusing new readers who are coming in and then boring readers who have been with you from the long haul. So, sales usually tend to build, although always the first book in the series has the most because
Really?
you're constantly then gaining new readers.
Wow.
And in terms of, help from the publishing house, I kind of had these grandiose ideas that, they were going to fly me all over on book tours. And yeah, not so much. I mean, they're great. They do all of the editing, and I have publicity help for getting reviews, and they do all the cover art. But it's still the author. Yeah, it's me in my Subaru. And yeah.
Do you take yourself to bookstores?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you do that on your own?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Have you made arrangements with any bookstores here in the Bay Area?
Definitely, yeah. I just did an event with Lee's Books in Sunnyvale a few weeks ago, and I'm getting ready to do a whole push when the next book comes out in August.
Are you going to contact some of the other bookstores around?
For sure, yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're starting number 20. Mm-hmm. You're contracted through 21.
Correct.
And when will 21 be published?
Oh gosh, 2025 maybe. I don't know. I'd have to look at my contract, but yeah. So I've already written book 18, and that comes out next February.
Okay.
To give you a sense. So yeah, I think that'll come out like February of 2025.
How much time is it between each published book?
6 months.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
And that seems, from what we've heard from other authors, that seems to be about 6 months faster than most.
Yeah.
Seems like it's a year from signing the agreement to getting the book out, but for you it's 6 months.
Correct. And I think especially with a series like this, readers devour them. They're meant to be something that you read for comfort, and so they want more quickly.
Hence cozy.
Yes. Exactly.
Okay. And so you're obviously still writing this one series. Mm-hmm. You had another series with, what was the total number you did for that series?
So I have another series with Macmillan that is 6 books in, and that features a brewer in Leavenworth, Washington. And then my Pacific Northwest mystery series went 5 books. And then I wrote another small series for Kensington that only went 2 books because at that point in time I had maxed out my capacity.
So you are, 33, 34 books or so in?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I mean, that's a fantastic rate of production.
Yeah.
And when you said that Macmillan does editing for you, so do you have your own editor from Macmillan that goes through the book and gives you feedback?
Yeah. I have. I've had 2 editors at Macmillan now because people have moved on. And ironically, both of their names are Hannah's. So I have Hannah 1 and 2.0. They've both been fantastic, and it's lovely to have an editor who's come along with this series too, because they can offer some guidance in terms of growth and maybe a place where they might suggest give a little more backstory here about a character for somebody who's brand new if they're jumping in at book 18, let's say, which I cannot even fathom. I have to read a series straight in order.
Yeah,
but readers always
I do the same thing.
Yeah, do you? Yeah. Readers email me all the time. I started at book 12 and now I'm hooked. I'm like, really? Okay.
I assume that each book has the same protagonist.
The books follow, pastry chef Juliet, of course, because it's Ashland and Shakespeare. And she is a baker turned amateur sleuth. So the entire series follows her, as well as now an ongoing, growing cast of characters.
So each one has a murder off-site, and then it's just a matter of Juliet arranging some way to find out who did it.
Exactly. Yeah. Piecing it all together. And then, on the side, she's like baking up a beautiful tort and, making an oat milk latte and all those things, and then digging into some crime on the side.
All right. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to find out about your baker background.
Okay.
We'll be right back with Ellie Alexander.
Thank you to the City of Montessorino for their continued support of KCAT Public Media. The City of Montessorino has enabled KCAT to inspire, educate, entertain, and inform our community through the magic of television and digital media for over 38 years. Thank you.
Welcome back. We are talking to Ellie Alexander. And before we go back to questions, I would like once again to know if the audience is here. Audience? Okay. All right. So this big, long series is based on a baker.
Right.
Is this a passion of yours? Are you a baker? How did you pick a baker?
Yeah, well, I know. I think food is definitely a love language. My parents growing up, my dad was an English teacher and a big Shakespeare buff. So he would have me quoting sonnets and soliloquies and reading, like all the classics. And my mom was the mystery reader. And their baking styles were very similar. My dad on the weekend would bake an 8-layer almond mocha buttercream torte with fresh apricot jam, and he would hand pipe it and it would be beautiful. My mom, on the other hand, would just slap together a chocolate cake that didn't look beautiful but always tasted delicious. So definitely the kitchen and food was such a part of my childhood that I think that just really resonated. I am not professionally trained. I just know enough to be dangerous now. I've spent a lot of time in commercial kitchens and have had the great honor of shadowing pastry chefs and yeah, because that is an art.
Yeah. How did you arrange that?
I just called people, or especially early on, I wanted to make sure that I had a true sense of what it would be like to run a small bakery. I wanted to get an experience of what it was like going to culinary school. So I got to tour a culinary school and shadow there. Yeah.
Well, maybe you can get a guest shot on the bear.
Maybe I can. Yes, exactly.
That would be cool.
That would be amazing.
You write. I'm going to be able to speak this any moment now. You're writing cozy mysteries. Are you a member of the Mystery Writers of America, and are you active in that sort of organization?
Yeah, the mystery writing community is actually very small. So
really,
yeah, definitely. And it's great to have colleagues in that field. I have lots of mystery writing friends who will do Zooms or social media events together, in-person conferences. I think it's important to kind of have a network of other writers. And there's always this idea that writers are super competitive, which is not necessarily true at all in my experience. There's space for all of us, and I find it to be really collaborative.
Yeah, that's great. And when you write these mysteries, obviously you've got one right after the other. I assume that you have 22 through 25 in your head, or close to it.
Maybe, yeah.
Do you think that you'll ever write in a different genre?
Definitely, yeah. In fact, during the pandemic, I wrote a standalone novel, Lost Coast Literary, which is my first non-mystery that I have published. And it is set in on the Lost Coast of California and features a young editor who inherits her grandmother's estate and realizes that everything she edits on the page happens in real life. So it's kind of a touch of magical realism.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was it well received?
It was well received, and it was the hardest book that I've written, and I think it was really good for me to challenge myself to do something different because, I've written so many mysteries and always have ideas for how the next body is going to happen if I don't run out of ways to kill someone first. So it was really good to step into a different headspace and push myself out of my comfort zone.
Did Macmillan publish it?
They did not. No. They want my mysteries.
Yeah. And how'd you get that one published?
I published that one myself.
Did.
Yeah. Yeah. I started my own press. And one of my goals with coaching and my mystery writing students eventually is to potentially publish some of my students' work as well.
Wow.
That's my long-term vision. Yeah.
Wow. I think it's great to have your own publishing company. And I guess there was no conflict with Macmillan. So they had the option of picking it up and said no?
They only have the option on my mysteries.
Okay.
So anything that I'm doing standalone, my goal is to do that on my own, just because at this stage of my career, I've established a readership, and it's I like the process also of working with independent editors and other voices and getting to have my hands in the cover design. So I kind of like straddling both worlds.
Are your books in audio?
They are, yeah.
And does Macmillan pick the narrator and as well as the cover artist?
The cover artist is done by whomever purchases the audio rights. I've had Tantor and Blackstone. And fortunately, I usually get to pick the talent. In fact, for the Bake Shop Mysteries, an actor from OSF narrates them, Kate Mulligan, which is amazing because she has a connection, obviously, to Ashland, and I love that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Has she done all of them?
She's not done all of them. She's done kind of the second half of the series.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is she going to be there moving forward?
I hope so. Yeah. It's the goal.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Let's go back a little bit in terms of, or talk a little bit about your process. So you mentioned how you did like a 5-hour writing, and when you're between 9 and 2, I think you said.
Yeah.
Do you still have that same discipline?
Definitely. Yeah.
Do you have the same hours?
I have the same hours. I have the same hours. And my husband, who's in the audience, knows, like, you do not bother me between 9 and 2. Like, do not come knock on my office door because you might end up a victim in the next book.
Okay, I'm laughing because I'm assuming you're kidding.
Maybe, yeah. No. Yeah, it's just, it's so ingrained in my process. Before I start a book, I sketch the whole idea out on paper. And I always need to know, like, who the suspects are, what their motives are, what they're lying about, hiding. That naturally embeds red herrings into the story. I don't always know who the killer's going to be. I have an idea, but the goal is that each of the 5 suspects should have a viable reason for wanting to kill the victim. So I do that first, and then when I'm actually working on a first draft of a manuscript, it is 2,000 words every day, Monday through Friday, and that gets me a really terrible, awful first draft in about 6 weeks.
Okay. How many words are your novels typically?
Somewhere between 75,000 words.
Okay. I mean, they're good size.
Yeah.
Because I think the standard is around 90, something like that?
I think anymore it's closer to 80.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great. Okay. So you don't get disturbed in those 5 hours.
No.
Do you have a pretty significant social media phase to your business?
I do. That's really part of being an author in 2023 and in this modern time, and the way that you get to connect with readers. So that's definitely an important piece of it. And I tend to do that. If anyone follows me online, you'll see, like, oh, it's 4:00. Ellie's posting. That's because I've finished my word count. So when I'm actually writing, I turn my phone on Do Not Disturb. I'm not great about responding to texts, anything like that, because I really do try to protect and covet that time that I'm in that headspace.
Yeah. Do you try to respond to everybody that sends you a message?
Maybe not everyone. I try to respond. I try to engage as much as I can, and I've been so astounded by the real connections that you can actually establish.
Oh, wow.
and what readers share and what they send me, and just I think because I write cozies and they're light and fun, my mission has always been to provide readers a point of comfort. And so it's always so rewarding to get email from people who are like, your books were with me through cancer treatment. Your books were with me through a divorce, through loss, through grief. And that really just like centers my work and what I'm doing.
Oh, that must feel fantastic to get an email like that.
Yeah.
I mean, not obviously for sad news, but just the fact that your books are providing comfort to people.
Yeah, if I can just be like a little tiny part of that in someone's life. Yeah.
Wow, that's great. Okay, so your editor gets the first draft, or not the first draft. Which draft do you end up giving to the editor?
Draft 4.
Okay.
Yeah. The first draft is terrible. It's just awful. I try to think of editing in layers. So the first draft is just getting the story out. It's the bones. And then the second draft I'll come through and like really start to build the world a little bit. The third draft is about character arcs and growth and relationship. And then the last layer is the food.
Okay. All right. And so do you also have early readers that are friends?
I do, yeah. Some of them are in the audience.
That seems to be a fairly common thing for authors, is to have some people be able to read some of the novels. Do you have author friends that ask you to do early reading?
Author friends, not so much, because I think we're all on similar deadlines, but I get asked to blurb a lot of books, to read a finished book and offer a blurb and vice versa, yeah.
Who were your influences? I mean, you've mentioned Agatha Christie and P.D. James, but were they influences in terms of your writing and what you chose to write?
I am just a voracious reader. I read everything. The sad truth is it's harder to read mysteries when I'm writing them. I don't read a lot of mysteries anymore, only on breaks in between. But I have so many influences. I'm a huge Jane Austen fan, Willa Cather. I love Louise Penny. I mean, I could go on and on and on. I love historical fiction. Any historical fiction, I'm in.
We'll compare notes after.
Okay, yeah.
Because I'm also a big fan of those.
Yeah.
Okay. When you described doing the writing, when you're writing the story, it sounds like you're a combination of plotter and pantser. Most authors seem to be one or the other, but you are kind of plotting, and then you're kind of going with the flow once you actually start the writing. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think that's very accurate. I think it would be really hard to completely be a pantser for a mystery, just because as a reader of mysteries, first and foremost, I don't want to feel cheated. I don't want to, this aha moment where suddenly the sleuth has like divine intervention and has solved the case, right? So in order to do that well, you have to have suspects with reasons for murder, with motive. So that's that piece. But then, when I'm actually drafting, I try to just let the story flow.
And you said the series takes place in Ashland?
It takes place in Ashland, yeah.
Okay. And you had mentioned before the show started that you lived in Oregon and you recently moved to the Bay Area. Will you do books based in the Bay Area?
I think there's going to need to be a Sunnyvale murder. I have some ideas. My friend Mel, who's here, took me to the Sunnyvale Historical Society, and now I'm like, maybe. Watch out.
Yeah, that's great. Have you had any interest at all? I ask this of every author. Have you had any interest at all from TV or movie studios?
Not to date. No. Early on, when the series first sold, my agent got a call, but nothing ever came of it. So who knows? One day.
It's of all the authors that we've talked to, so few have had anything. A lot have had, rights purchased for some period of time, but very few have actually had their books made into a TV show or movie. It seems like it's a very hard thing to get done.
I think so, yeah. Yeah, because a lot of times Hollywood will option something, but then getting it to the screen is the other story.
Yes. And you said earlier that you've had 2 editors, right?
Right.
But do you have the same agent that you've had since the beginning?
I have the same agent, yeah.
Wow. That's fantastic also.
Yeah. I know.
Okay, so if we went out to get your books, we could get 16 of them or 17?
Yeah, you could get 16 right now, soon to be 17.
And every 6 months we can get a new one.
And every 6 months you can get a new one.
And how does Macmillan promote it internally? What do they do to let people know that the book is out there?
I think they have relationships with obviously bookstores and Barnes and Noble and online communities, so they use their marketing arm to do that for sure. Yeah.
And your books are at Barnes and Noble.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And do most bookstores carry them?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's all the relationship I think of having a bigger publisher that has some sway, and having a long-running series helps too, because I think bookstores are, they don't always have shelf space, so they might be willing to carry something where they know, like, oh, there's a lot more here.
Yeah. Well, I'm definitely going to be looking for them. And as we talked, I would have to start book 1.
I know. Ooh, it's a daunting task.
You have to have the background. I don't know. I've just never understood how you can go in the middle. But I'm definitely looking forward to it. I want to thank you for being on. Audience, thank you for being enthusiastic. And I'm actually now going to sign off.
Thanks so much for having me.
I appreciate that. All right, so there you have it, people. We're going to close the book on today's podcast. Again, a shout out to KCAT for letting us do this. If you want to see other podcasts that we've done, you can go on lloyd.show/YouTube. And that's Lloyd with 2 L's. Don't ask me why. I have to find out from my parents. It's too late now, but why they picked somebody name with 2 L's. So anyway, that's that's all we've got. And we will see you next time.
You just heard Lit with Lloyd here on KCAT Radio. Explore all our KCAT original programming at kcat.org/radio.